Well, you are a little bolder than I am in regards to the injury. You're being optimistic about it. I would like to be optimistic. We all hope for the best there. I certainly believe that as long as he is healthy, Gronowski's healthy, yes, they have, I don't want to overstate this, but decidedly upgraded at quarterback.
And they've upgraded, I think, the room. It's not like, with all due respect to the other guys that were in the room, Jackson Stratton's still part of the room. I really like Marco Lainez. I don't know that he ever got a fair shake early, but I like how you're smiling again. Well, hey, you watch.
Love Marco Lainez.
He's going to go tear it up at Elon. You watch. He is going to tear it up at Elon. but bringing in Hank Brown and bringing in Jimmy Sullivan, and they got to be here for bowl prep. When's the last time you had a new quarterback, two new quarterbacks that were here and able to practice during December? That's big. And so they're both going to be here. They're already there. They're able to develop some chemistry with those guys. Then they're going to be able to play. That's big. And you lose Marco Lainez and James Rezar, along with Cade, who was a lame duck at the end of the year. So they've upgraded the room as a whole.
And when is the last time it could have been stated that if the starting quarterback is not ready, that you have a proven Big Ten quarterback ready to go?
Yeah, I mean, the forgotten guy in all this is the guy who finished the season, Brendan Sullivan, who probably should have been starting from the beginning last year. It's a controversial thing. I don't like how he finished his season, certainly in the bowl game, how the second half it just kind of crumbled. But he's still here, and I don't know that he'll be here in the fall. I don't know. What's his attitude towards the whole situation? Who knows? Because if Gronowski's not going to be playing on the field, what is Sullivan going to learn by the end of spring practice that he doesn't already think or know now? Because he's not going to be able to compete with him unless he can just show out and prove to the coaches. But even that, like, coaches, I can't imagine they're going to anoint him as the starting guy over Gronowski before seeing Gronowski in uniform. So, yeah, you're absolutely right. If they can keep those guys, and then, I mean, think about it, Mark. If they somehow keep Stratton and Jimmy, if they have enough spots, those spots are gobbled up by quarterbacks right now. If they keep all of those quarterbacks, that's a lot of depth. And I say a lot of depth. It's not like elite depth. But you have a guy in Sullivan who's a proven Big Ten starter who played a lot last year for this team and won some. You have a guy who has played as a starter at Auburn in Hank Brown. And then you have a guy in Jackson Stratton. Well, no, he did. He did. I'm not saying it was – I'm saying he's not a guy who's never seen the field.
Sure.
He has seen the field and played big-time football. Not necessarily the best of performances, but he's played for an SEC team. Started at quarterback briefly. And Jackson Stratton comes here as a walk-on, but he played last year. So, I'm just saying you don't have, if you're in an emergency situation, now you've got four guys who have all started for a Power 4 team at some point, whether it just be a game or a whole season, whatever. I just think if you can bring all those guys back, wow, what a luxury. And then you can groom Jimmy Sullivan at the end.
I would think that we would be able to come to a conclusion on Brendan Sullivan's attitude toward this situation in that he decided to stay.
Yeah, and that's why I say, I mean, I think that's the catch-22. Don and I have talked about this on the post-game show, is you don't want a guy who's complacent. You don't want a guy who's comfortable being the number two. Because if he's comfortable being the number two, then how much of a gamer is he? And I'm not saying Brendan Sullivan's comfortable being the number two, but if it's obvious he's not going to start, why is he staying? That's all. That's what I would want to know. That's maybe a good question for spring if we get him for spring availability. Let's play hypothetical. And I know some coaches don't like hypothetical questions. I think you get away with it more with players. But I'd like to ask Brendan, let's just assume that a 5-year, fifth-year decorated quarterback in Mark Gronowski is the starter. Why would you – and you're here in fall of 2025. Why would you be here? Well, not saying why – I'm not trying to ask a question, a gotcha question to try to get him to say, well, no, it doesn't make any sense. I would want to know, assuming that's what happens, give me the reason why you would still be here. And because his answer would be, and he's not going to say, well, because I'm fine with being a number two. But I'd be curious to learn what his approach to that is. If he says, because I love this school, I love being a Hawk, I want to be the best teammate possible, I want to provide depth and be ready to go and keep competing, great. That's exactly what you want to hear. And I would assume he would say that. And hopefully that would be honest and truthful. But that's the type of competition hopefully Tim Lester and company are breeding into that room and that group.
So, unless I'm missing something here, I don't know that he could answer that question in that they bring in Gronowski. Gronowski's hurt, cannot compete in the spring. Kirk Ferentz, rightfully so, is not going to hand a starting position to a player from the outside who's not proven anything at Iowa, especially not in the Power Five. So, there is going to be a quarterback battle in August.
I would think so. Yeah, that's why I say it's kind of a hypothetical question. You know, say you lose the battle in fall. You don't want to, but say that happens. What would make you, besides just I can't transfer because it's too late, what would make you want to stay? Give me the reasons why, other than being the number one guy, you want to be at Iowa. And there should be, by the way, there should be reasons. There should be other reasons besides I want to be the number one guy. What are those reasons?
Meaning the other things that you mentioned. You like campus, your teammates,
The
you like
coaches, you love the
culture,
coaches,
the
you love Tim
coaches.
Lester. They're
Yes.
making you a better human being. I'd be curious to see what his answer
Yeah.
to that question it would be. And I don't know that I would ask it that way because, yeah, it's going to be a hard one. I guess maybe that'd be a better question during the season, right? Like, hey, you're battling every week as a backup. Tell me why you don't regret this decision. Maybe he would regret the decision at that point, but tell us what you're gaining from being a backup right now. I don't know.
I am going to deliver my quarterback rankings in the transfer portal here in the next few weeks. So,
okay. Just Big Ten or nationwide?
I'm going to go through every conference.
All right.
And then the other portion of that is I would love to go from team to team. This wouldn't take long. How many teams have a quarterback start all 12, 13, 14, however many games they play the entire season? I bet it's less than 50%.
Yeah. Not Iowa. Iowa started 3 different quarterbacks this year.
Yeah, maybe it's not. It's somewhere in the 50% range, I would guess, to keep one quarterback healthy the entire year, every week. And then when you brought up the revenue sharing, my quick thought there is maybe that lessens the impact of NIL. Each one of these schools is going to have $22 million reported to spend on these players. Now, they don't have to spend it, but that's kind of the cap or the availability that's been reported for these teams at 22 million. So a player I would think would be less likely to just run for the money rather than weighing the decision. Okay, I can make 400,000 here, and yeah, there it's going to be 550, but I enjoy where I am. I want to be here, and it's not that big a difference.
Right. Yeah, and I've said this before, but my understanding of this, and you can correct me if I'm wrong on this, Mark, but NIL deals, because the NCAA and the conference can't tell players that you can't make money on your name, image, and likeness. But now deals of over $600 have to go before an approval committee. And I believe that's an NCAA approval committee, which doesn't make a whole lot of sense to me because then the Big Ten is in cahoots with the NCAA that is not regulating other conferences. That just seems odd to me. But this is a unique year, too, because they recruited guys in the portal knowing that revenue sharing was coming. So unless you're privy to the ins and outs of exactly how it's structured, the word on the street is that Gronowski got 7 million or 7. Excuse me. Let me back up. 7 figures, 1 million plus. And so if that's the case, how is that split? Is that all NIL money, or how does that work? I kind of got a lowdown of that from a pretty good source, but I'd have to go back and comb through how that works, I guess. And I would think it's going to affect. Yeah, it's going to affect recruiting, especially portal recruiting here in these future windows.